I declare bankruptcy!
This is where the fun begins.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Yeah.
That was me laughing at the end of the open there.
Welcome back to a special episode of the Sithcast podcast, a Star Wars podcast where we pretty much talk anything and everything Star Wars. One of your hosts, PJ the Paradox, alongside my co-host Sean Solo. Nilda is enjoying her Super Bowl party, so she won't be able to make it tonight. But yeah, there's some like big huge event tonight. I don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, we don't know what that is.
But guess what? This is our Super Bowl, and we have a returning special guest tonight. We have Tom Spina from Regal Robot.
Thank you. It's
been a while.
Do we get a punch card? Do I get a free sandwich after a certain number?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Maybe we'll send you like a Sithcast shirt at some point.
Right.
In a few
where I don't have to Photoshop it in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
is this close enough to Sith? I mean, they're disgusting creatures, right? Like
they are mean.
Yeah,
they are.
Right? Like, they're not nice. They're Sith adjacent at the very least.
I know.
Yeah, they steal a couple things here and there. But obviously, with a special event tonight. But there was something special that got announced yesterday that obviously we couldn't wait to talk about. Could we have waited maybe after this event? Yeah, we could have. Probably. But no, we couldn't wait. Honestly, I think, Tom, you've been teasing us in the past couple weeks or past month.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was looking at the schedule. I was like, Empire Strikes Back prop. What?
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, and I think Sean and I were like, we just had him on, and we talked about the Rancor.
He wouldn't keep things from us.
No, you would have, take,
we're special.
Hurt our wallets a little bit more.
At any given point, I am, I'm definitely sitting on more information than I'm sharing, unfortunately, and it drives me bananas.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm dying to tell it. How many times have you caught yourself where you were getting ready to say something? You're like, oh, then you.
It's all the time. Especially, sometimes we'll have someone who like comes to the studio to pick something up, and usually if someone's coming to the studio, they don't really get past the lobby. It's like kind of a handoff and go like, thanks. Okay. See ya, stay and chat for a little bit. And every once in a while I'll look and Christian's desk, our 3D artist, is right there. And I'll see he's got like a 3D print of one of the next maquettes on his desk that he was like, doing some final touches on. And you're kind of like, oops, look over here.
Yeah. You didn't see that.
Hey, look, what's that on the wall? Grab it,
He's like, oh yeah, have you seen our old Rancor that we had a long time ago?
Yeah.
Like here, like, oh yeah.
Why that old thing?
Chewbacca bust out. Like, hey, look
almost
at this.
New. You've never seen it in person. Though,
Yeah.
The funniest thing with this was when we posted up the first tease, which is only like a week ago. We had, prior we had done the announcement, which you said, where we just said like we were going to do an Empire prop. But then we did the tease where it was Phil drawing and Rob put question marks on everything he was drawing. Like, what's Phil sketching? And every answer that I gave, every post I made spelled out Wampa if you took the first letter of everything I wrote.
Oh, really?
Like I said, like, we anticipate many people answering, and then I gave the picture and everybody started answering. And like everybody was guessing, and anybody who guessed wrong, I would like reply with a Wampa anagram, and like nobody was picking it up. And Rob was making fun of me all day, but I had a lot of fun.
Well, you got to make Regal robot decoder rings. We got to figure
that. Yeah, that's what you need, right? Like, hold on a second,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say too, obviously the last time we talked to you, it was the release of the Rancor, and man, that release was really successful. I think there might have been quite a few people that were disappointed in picking up the Legacy Edition. Just because it crashed your website, people couldn't put it.
It slowed down the website. People had to queue. Nothing crashed. It's just really? There were times where people were trying to load, and it just said there are too many people on the website. Wait your turn.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, it definitely was. It was a bigger than usual response, and in 10 minutes, those did sell out. What's interesting about all those sellouts, though, and I think I say this every time, most of the orders happened in the first 30 seconds. So even people, and those the sort of delay error messages that people were getting was only in the first 2 minutes. So there was still 8 solid minutes to grab one after that. But it was like huge peak for 30 seconds or a minute, and then over the course of that last 10 minutes, the last few sold. But it was as always, like, we know how something's going to go really within the first like minute or two it goes on sale. And we knew it was going to sell well just from the way people were talking about it. But as usual, I was like, oh, it's going to take a few hours at the very least. Maybe it'll take a few days to sell out the Legacy. And then it was just gone. And we were really sort of shocked by that, but happily. So.
Yeah, I think it will be the case for this piece just because it's a Wampa.
Yeah,
and
original trilogy.
Yeah, and it is beautiful. Like, I mean,
and it is a replica of the prop, whereas like the other stuff are these maquettes. They're the early versions of things. They're not the same thing as like a replica of the thing you saw on screen. Whereas this is, the first 2 shots you see of the Wampa, literally the only close-ups that were in the movie until the special edition came out, are Phil with this puppet. And it was a huge favorite prop of mine forever. Going into the archives, there were 2 things that were on the top of my list to see when I went to the archives the first time. And one of them wasn't there because it was on tour, but this was. This was one of those 2 things. And it was just something I had seen in books. I had seen it from Star Wars to Indiana Jones book. I had seen it in the Chronicles book after that. And, just sat there kind of going like, it stunned me that a small puppet like that fooled me. You know what I mean? Like, I in my mind, it was always a big guy in a costume because the old making ofs always showed the guy in the costume. That's funny with the no spoilers, by the way. It's not going to happen here. I literally don't know.
How did the original puppet hold up when you saw it?
So, oh man, what's great is it's extremely detailed for the scale. And especially considering that it was a fabricated piece. So it's not something where like Phil sculpted it and molded it and cast it. It's something where he took like latex and cotton and built up over an armature and built up over a little, kind of an underskull that was, it's like a vac plastic underskull with some taxidermy jaws. And then he added a bunch of other teeth and things. And luckily the materials of it have held up great. But the level of detail on it is so good that seeing it in person was, sometimes you see something in person that's a real movie prop and you get disappointed, or you're like, look better on screen. Like, this thing looks killer, like no matter how close you get to it. And over the decade plus that I've been lucky enough to get to go there, I have gotten very, very close with that prop numerous times.
That's awesome.
Now we're sharing that we're taking the benefits of that and sharing it with everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, And this like came out of left field, right? And
For you guys, for us,
yeah,
we've been thinking about it forever.
yeah, and I'm sure you guys couldn't wait to talk about it, but I think just when I just saw, like, you usually, by the way, guys, if you guys haven't a chance, please check out Regal Robots Facebook page. And you could get, like, first, you'll be the first to know.
Collector showcase the group, because that's where all the really fun, like, behind the scenes stuff goes. Yeah, if on Facebook, cool just search Regal Robot Fan and Collector Showcase, and it'll come up.
Yeah.
And please join. We'll find you in the suggested members, and we'll push you through once you okay the rules or whatever. But it's totally worth it. It's a lot of there it is. Rob posted that today.
Nice.
Yeah. And the thing too is that, like, if you join the group, you'll be the first to know with a lot of the products that
and if you got the decoder ring, you can find out all my clues.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Well, here's the thing too, is that, like, I would just look at your schedule, just because I want to see if there's any time, like, okay, let's see when and where we could bring Tom back to give us more updates. And I'm like, wait a minute, Empire Strikes Back prop replica February, and that's what, like, whoa, like, and then I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what it could be, is it this, is it that? Oh my gosh, I hope it's not a Wampa, because that is just going to really kill me, because I really hate the fact that I love Star Wars creatures this much. And you gave us a Wampa.
Knowing me, you had to suspect it was a creature, right? Like,
yeah, of course. I just didn't. I wanted to deny it. Maybe I was like, oh, maybe there is something else that.
Right. Maybe they're doing the Hoth scanner thing that found Luke with, or maybe We had a lot of people guessing a lot of different things. There was a lot of people that guessed it was going to be a Wampa arm for some reason. This time.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
Too. Yeah, I thought that would be the case too.
Yeah.
This really, like,
you honestly, also got didn't you get a lot of guesses of they thought it was a Tauntaun?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, look, we've done the Tauntaun maquette, which was Phil's basic final approval sculpt of the Tauntaun, the about 12-inch tall one. We've done Phil's concept Tauntaun busts, 4 different sculpts that were done to be the Tauntaun choices for the Tauntaun head. And we've done a 1-to-1 life-sized wall bust for the Tauntaun, which we still do. They're actually working on 4 of them at the shop now. 5? Maybe 5. But if you're talking about the stop motion puppet Tauntaun, that's a real challenging beast. Not that I'm ever going to say never, but the way that you have to do the fur transfer on the hair on that and stuff,
oh man,
it's not geared towards mass duplication. And if you are going to do that, the ways that do lend themselves to mass duplication are not going to give you the look that original puppet had. And knowing us, that's what we want to achieve. And to take it back to the Wampa for a minute, this was something I knew how to achieve. This is my wheelhouse is furry monsters, and I like making things that don't look brand new. And there's a lot on this that it's tough to show in the photos. Someone actually mentioned that in Rob's photo that he posted on the group today, where we took it outside with him and Max, that in the sunlight you can see all the discoloration on the fur more. In the studio lights, it kind of blows out. It just looks like white fur. But in person, especially if you have some of the original fur next to it, you can just see there's just all this distressing on the whole thing. And then across the chest and around the mouth and the mustache and everything, top of the head, he's got all this ice and stuff dripped in. And we did that the same way that Phil did it for the movie.
Yeah, I was curious how you did, like, the ice effect and the snow effect on them.
Carefully.
Very carefully, yes.
Very, very well, I like to think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's an old effects trick, but it works great, and it came from Phil. So that's one of those things where it's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Let's do this the way Phil did this, and let's even if it means a lot of handwork, but it adds such dimension to it. And even just the discoloration of the fur. making sure that it's not just bright white. You know, there's really nothing on him. In that picture there, I think his mustache maybe looks the brightest white, but even that has layers of this distressing on it, this spray and stuff, so that it's not, you know, just pure fresh fur anywhere on him. And that's what I like. And you can see different tones coming through on his head. You can see the beiges and the whites and the grays kind of coming through. Around the chest, it's a little heavier. On his, you know, as you get closer in, you know what? Peach, I'm gonna send you on Messenger. I'm gonna send you a picture that we haven't published of his mouth up close, because I think fun shot. So there you go.
So the mouth is articulated, correct?
No. So this is a static replica. This is like our Rancor replica. This is a prop replica of that prop puppet. However, it is not a functional puppet.
Okay. Wow.
I thought the mouth moved.
Okay, let me see if I could save it, and then I could zoom in better on it.
Yeah. But it is, you know, this is it's one of those things where the original is made out of flexible materials, and in order to do that on a mass-produced replica, you've got to use materials that might break down over time. And we didn't want to make it too mechanical and just rigid. And plus, anytime you add those kinds of mechanics in things, then stuff starts breaking down as well. But yeah, I mean, and if that pic I sent over just kind of shows just some of the layers of detail that are on this thing.
Holy moly! Wow, look at the teeth.
Teeth look amazing.
And there's intentionally broken teeth inside of his mouth that Phil did to give it like this kind of sense of story and backstory.
Look at this, the icicles on his fur.
Yeah.
The tongue. Look at the textures on the tongue itself. I mean, the paint application. Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of layers inside just a small space. What's funny is you can't easily photograph or see everything that's going on in that mouth. There's a lot of he's kind of got multiple layers of teeth, especially on the top. So it's, you know, things hide each other, and then on the real prop, you know, it's like you can't just yank that mouth open and stick your head in to look at stuff. We actually went in with an endoscope, like you would to, like, you know, go
for like a medical
somebody
procedure.
out who needs their esophagus checked out. I mean, it's a little lighted camera on a tiny rod that we could get in a flexible tube, and you know, we're going in and checking out the back teeth and counting them and making sure positioning and stuff, because there's only so much you can do from the outside looking in. And it actually caused us to update the file and you know, basically redo our prototype right after my last trip to the archives, because we had spent it was a better part of 3 days we had this puppet out while we were working on other stuff, but we kept coming back to it, kept finding new things. And I feel really glad that we were able to do that after we had already done a bunch of the prototype work, because I had knowledge of it before, and we had seen it on 2 trips before. We scanned it, we photographed it, we measured the heck out of it, we color matched things and stuff. But after physically working on them for months, to then go back and see it again opens your eyes to totally new things, and you know, really told me where we were on the right track and where we were on the wrong track, and you know, where we had to correct. And I feel like, you know, that last trip really put this over the top for me and made it like, okay, you know, maybe we were like 95% before. Now I feel like we're so close, and it's really cool. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you, like, I know you say you mentioned that you know, you go to the archives and stuff like that. Like, is that something like, okay, I got to spend a week out there type of or a couple days, if you don't mind me asking? Because sometimes, like, trying to get like this level of detail, I feel like could take like a good week, like just going back and forth to the archives and like, hey, you know, I don't feel right about this.
Right.
Let me go back, because you know, it's just like it's not like you're taking taking it home and like
I would show up on their door every day, like just guys, hey, I don't feel good about something. Can I come back in? I gotta just see one more thing. Look out,
Johnny's back again.
yeah, exactly. Security. security, we need someone to come down to the archives again.
He has met his quota for the week.
Right. We usually tie it in with other trips. I tend to, we have work in that area, both with Lucasfilm and outside, for my other company and with Regal. So, there's always an excuse for us to be in that area when we're, if we're getting a trip going. And it's funny, we tend to do the archives trips a few days at a time, usually under a week at a time. We try and keep everything, honestly, I'm kind of cheap. So, I try to be really careful about our spending on stuff like that. So, we tend to do these kind of like guerrilla trips where it's like you fly out at night, you get to the archives the next day, you work all day, you go somewhere else that night for a meeting, then you come back the next morning, and we cram a lot of stuff in a few days. But it's usually 2 or 3 of us, and that gives us someone to photograph, someone to measure and color match, and someone to scan. And some trips, depending on the type of stuff you're seeing, some things are more what's the word? Not simple, but more straightforward. Right. A small sculpture or maquette, like some of the prequel maquettes that they have are single color, so you're not having to do all of this color research. You're not having to do, checking patterns and things. You're, mostly worried about getting the scan and some overall dimensions. Whereas, then you have something like this where it's color and sculpt and fur, and then teeth and things hidden in the mouth, and horns hidden underneath the hair, and all of this different information that you've got to figure out, because it's not easy to say like, okay, what does this look like under the hair? Right. And that's where like, my many decades of working with puppets and creatures comes into play, because you start to have an understanding of like, okay, how much do I have to pull away to account for that hair? And and then you do some trial and error, and basically you measure the thing and you put prods in and you try and figure out where the sculpt is underneath it, where you have to. But at the end of the day, you've got to output one at full scale and put some hair on it and see like, okay, does this feel right, or am I too bulky somewhere, or is something not showing? He's got kind of musculature, and he's got some on the real one, there's actually like a piece of wood that cuts across his chest. And if you feel on our thing, even under the fur, you can feel like the corner where that piece of wood is.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And it's just like, you barely see it. It's almost invisible. But for me, it's like, I want to know it's there. I want to feel this thing and feel like I'm, putting hands on the original.
Right. Yeah. Like it's hard to see what the eyes are. Are the eyes like more of a glass eye? Or are they matte? Or they?
So that's actually a really good question. We found out something interesting. So the special edition Wampa head actually, so he just has what looks like black glass eyes or whatever, but there's actually no eye forms. It's just literally gaping black holes that Howie Weed could see through. That this Wampa has glass eyes on the original, and I always assumed they were just black glass beads, like just like shark's eyes or whatever you would want to call it. And the first time that we got to, so I had seen it on previous trips, but it was always on a shelf or in a case. And I got close and I got to, I'd take a picture of it, and I would get real, I get up against the glass, and breathe on it.
You're like, Tom, hands off the glass, please.
Exactly. The alarm goes off. Like, Spina, come on. But the first time we took this out, I was going in to measure the diameter of the eye form, which is also kind of a tricky thing because, the eyelids cover the sides of those. So, what you tend to do on something like this, like you measure the width of the eye and then you estimate how much it must go past it to maintain the curvature. Again, this is something like, as a creature guy, we do a lot. So going in, I'm confident doing that stuff. I got calipers out, the digital calipers, and we're going and we're measuring each of the things. And I asked someone to put a light on it, and they came in with a little flashlight. And as soon as they hit it, we both were like, holy shit. Pardon my language.
No, it's fine.
So the eyes aren't black. They are amber with a black iris and a reflective blue pupil.
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to look. Yeah, I can't.
You'll never see it there.
Yeah, I mean,
don't
it's
even
hard
know.
to tell
I
with
think
that
I
picture
took a
too.
picture of ours. Let me see if I have a shot that shows it. That's like shareable.
Yeah. While you do that, Darth Rishi said, "How about a life-size Jabba the Hutt head?"
Ooh, I mean, that would be very, very large.
That would be fun to ship, right?
But yeah, it would be tough to ship. But I mean, we ship big stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know about that one. It'd be fun to tackle. I would love doing it.
Yeah.
Do I have something?
Far from that, does anyone know if Phil got inspiration for the Wampa from the Yeti on the Matterhorn ride at Disneyland?
I mean, I think the Yeti is, that's a pretty classic beast at that point. You had all kinds of abominable snowmen in movies prior. I don't, Phil definitely had. I don't see a lot. So what is it? Harold is what they call the Yeti on the Matterhorn. I don't see a ton of likeness between the two. I feel like Harold's got the blue skin and a taller face, and this Wampa is pretty squat and squinty, and he's got that kind of like heavy brow. But you never know. I'll ask him.
Yeah, Chris Lord says, which piece do you think is cooler, the Wampa or the Regal Rung? It's hard because
they're so different.
They're so different. They're so unique. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because I love the Rancor, but this Wampa is absolutely amazing. And it's just, and like I'm looking at the groups, and not only my group, your group, and a lot of other people's groups.
Yeah.
And I see first time Regal Robot like potential buyers for this.
Yeah,
they're like, I want this. I'm gonna buy this.
I'm really happy with.
Whoa, I didn't know you like.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of positivity, which is great, and it's it's tough. I don't know if I could pick between this and the Rancor. It's like, don't make me choose between my children.
Exactly.
I will say this: when I went to the archives, the Rancor was up there in things I wanted to see, but it wasn't at the top like the Wampa was. So I don't know. Maybe I like the Wampa better. Wampa was my handle on the RPF back in the day.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I know you real quick, just to rewind back a little bit. That's why I was like, what? You said the prequel maquette. What?
Who said that? I don't know what you're talking
about. Tom, please give PJ the official Jar Jar archive maquette he so desperately needs. We'll just leave it at that. We'll just leave it at that.
I don't know about that.
It has to be.
I'll have to figure out some anagrams to spell out if I'm going to if we're going to start talking about that. I don't know. People are going to need that decoder ring.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, well, again, join the group. Also, keep giving us hints.
Right.
Also, just to let you know, it's the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, so it'll be good timing.
True. Well, I mean, if you look at our calendar, we do say that there is something on the calendar for May 19th for the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. So I'll leave it like that. I'll just leave it at that.
Tom, it better not be Jar Jar.
Dreams do come true, Sean. Dreams do come true, Sean. Dreams do.
Right. Please, I feel like if it was, we'd have that exact split response.
Yeah.
Well, going back to this beautiful piece, my question for you, Tom, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of this question, the same question, is the hair, the fur.
Yeah.
How did you guys tackle that? Like, I mean, obviously it's rooted. It looks like.
It's done exactly the way Phil did it, although we updated the glue to be something that's not going to turn colors over time. Which is kind of typical stuff. But it's the same type of fur. It's an acrylic, fabric backed hair. And then you apply some of it around the face with loose hair that you have to cut off the backing in small chunks and lay it in a little bit at a time. That's something we do with our Chewbacca's and Tauntauns all the time. It's a very similar sort of thing. Chewbacca has a lot more hand-laid hair where you're gluing in little bits at a time, trying to make it look sort of like it's punched, but the Tauntauns and this guy, have a very similar approach. And luckily, like I said, this is like my bread and butter, laying up fur on messy creatures like this. So it was that was something when we were working on this. It was actually harder to find the right fur than it was to figure out how we were going to do it. How we were going to do it, I've that stuff I've known for 30 years, just from this is like the stuff I do, werewolves and creatures and whatever. But when it came to finding the fur, it's interesting because there was a particular type of hair used that was sort of fresh at the time, but Phil really distressed it. And it's aged a bit in the archives. That particular type of hair, there's 3 or 4 different types of it. The type that Phil used was real fresh, and he hand distressed it. There's a type that's sort of in the middle that sort of has a little head start on the distressing, in that it's kind of pre-washed and it has some pieciness to it. And it is a good foundation for the techniques that I do to make things look weathered. Unfortunately, that type got discontinued. And so that seems to happen to us a lot, where we're like, oh, that's going to make things so much easier. So that then goes out of the picture. Now we're back to, okay, we've got the really extreme hair and the kind of fresh hair. And so we have to pick, like, okay, how do we de-extreme this one to make it still look grungy? But and that's where we wound up. We actually got a hair that's even grungier than we wanted and pulled it back a little bit. And then we did color distressing. We did some liquid treatments on it to get bunched up and matted down, and then we do the ice treatment on top of that. And it's just, it's funny. Like I said, that was never going to be the hard part for us, not to do one of these or to toot my own horn. It never fails. I think the same thing happened when we had Salacious. The particular type of hair that's on that original puppet, it's a very, very common hair. And immediately when we decided to make that project, that hair went out of stock everywhere and no one was making it. And we had to find a batch of it at at an outlet, a factory outlet from China that had a few yards left. And it was like, we had to buy I forget how many. It was probably 15 or 20 yards to do that project. But we had to, luckily we found it. We got a couple of bolts of it and we had it shipped over. And it was a hunt. It was like a 2 or 3 week thing of are we going to have to get white fur and dye it? How are we going to do this?
So question, when Phil had to sketch these, did he sketch the Rancor ones all at the same time? Was it the same signing?
No, this was a separate one. And the real reason for that was we didn't know if the Rancor was going to work. We thought it was a cool idea with the sketches, but we had no idea how anybody was going to react to that. And so as soon as we put the Rancors up for sale, which was, I think that was November, we started talking to him about maybe doing this. And so this is now, it was the end of November when I think we did the Rancor. So this is really only about a 2-month process that you're talking there, and even a little less than that, because you got to realize, these photos weren't taken yesterday either, and we had to get approvals and things. So it's been hectic the last little bit at the studio getting all this stuff ready.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say too, I love the signature. I mean, the Legacy Edition with the signature, and not only the signature, but the sketch, because it's a piece of Phil's work, that you own, and he specifically made it for this piece
for you, really. For me, he's got to be thinking who's going to get this stuff. It's pretty freaking amazing. Look, at the end of the day, I collect my own, our own Regal stuff too. And it's I wanted the Legacy one. I want the one with the sketch from Phil freaking Tippett. What the hell, where are you gonna get that?
And that's why, for the collectors out there, I definitely encourage the Legacy Edition to get it while you can, especially the last one sold out in
Yeah, it was 10
minutes. The Rancor, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the thing too, I was in another podcast a couple days ago, and we're talking about value and signatures and things like this. This alone, the sketch alone, just adds so much value. This. Yeah. Well, not only is it special, right? Because Phil freaking Tippett, right?
That's his official middle name, by the way.
Yeah,
it is now.
It is now, and it's just like if you were like collecting comic books, getting the artist or the writer to sign your comic book. So this is, I hold it in that same type of realm, and not only that, like if Stan Lee drew like a little piece of drawing or Spider-Man on your comic book, that's effing amazing. That's how I hold this Legacy Edition too.
It's nice that you're saying that, because that's actually what Rob brought up to me when he suggested this. So Rob was the one who pitched the Legacy idea. It wasn't called the Legacy at the time. It was just like, what if we did a sketch edition? And I was really mixed on it at first. And what he brought out was, he was like, well, you go to see a comic creator, and people will pay him for a signature, but they'll pay more to get a sketch done, and they feel like that's a better thing, and it's a bigger investment. It's a more of a direct connection to the thing, and it was after we talked about a few different ways to do it. We talked about it with a few of our collectors. We talked about it with a few of the makers, guys that we thought would be fun to try this with, and it evolved. And in no small part thanks to Phil, into what it did. Initially, it was actually going to be a lot more uniform, where the idea was maybe the sketch would be very similar on each one, and depending on who it is. So Tom Sanamon did the sketch edition for our Prune Face maquette that came out last month.
Yeah,
and Tom, if people know his history, he is a very methodical, mechanical kind of guy. He does the armatures, the complicated builds. He built the AT-ATs, and so John Berg designed how the AT-AT was going to work, but he actually physically built all the parts for all of these, I think it was like 5 stop motion puppet AT-ATs. So you have to have a particularly analytical mind to pull that off. He's also, though, a very creative guy, and he sculpts and he draws and he paints and he does all this stuff. But so when he did his sketches, there's variety. There's maybe 6 or 7 different takes on Prune Face that he did. But he did multiples of each, and they're very, very consistent. It's like highly detailed, way more detailed than Phil's drawings, and very, very consistent. Whereas Phil, it's all id, it's just like complete, stream of consciousness, mad dreams, as you'd call it. And like, you get things like staring into the mouth of the monster. You get those, where you head and shoulders, you get the thing leaning in from the side. You get, there's looks at like just a paw in some of them, like reaching out for you and things like that. And that was the way he was with the Rancor too. There's all kinds of stuff. Phil also had the benefit of working on characters that had a scene, so it's like, Prune Face, all right, you didn't really do much in the movie. There's not a lot to draw from it. It'd be tough to do a Prune Face going like, rawr,
yeah.
But, Phil's lucky he got the Wampa and the Rancor. Like, he could sink his teeth into that, and he really did. And that's our favorite thing, is like, he sits there and he draws this wide variety of stuff. And so everybody gets something that's really unique at the end of the day.
So question. So when you go to send these out to customers, are you looking at the sketch going, I don't know if I might want to keep this for myself. It's like, it's so good.
Yeah, it definitely is tough, because it's like, so, it's too subjective a thing for us to put up and say like, okay, people can choose their sketch or something like that. That would be a nightmare to try and go through, 100 of these with different people requesting it. And it's like, oh, this guy wants that sketch, but he bought after this guy who also wants that sketch. So the first guy should get that sketch, but there's another guy who, it's like, So when it comes to the actual editions, we lay them out and we stack them, and they're just totally random and shuffled. And it's just, you take that one and that goes in the next frame you make, and then you put that in the next frame you make, and that's how they go out. But yeah, it definitely, like, when it comes to looking at them and going like, should I keep that one? Like, that one, I know, right? Maybe I want that one. I was like, the Rancor was a really tough one to choose. It was challenging. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, for me, it's like I see this one right here. I don't know if people are.
Oh yeah,
anyone can
yeah.
see it. I love that one. So
The wise
looks
old
like-
man of
can
the
you
mountain
just
kinda
like
look.
It looks like Harry and the Henderson.
What's
know.
great about that one is he's got
Right.
the snaggletooth going. Phil drew a bunch of them that have like just one, like if the mouth is
Oh.
closed, there's like one tooth sticking out. I love that.
Mhm. Yeah, no, but I was gonna say it's just one of those things too. Is like, I hope I get a good one.
Yeah.
Well, they're all good. They're all
They're
good.
all
I'll be
gonna be
happy
good.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going to be crazy is if you just completely accidentally get that one, everybody's going to be like, "What the hell, Spina's crime your favorite song?"
I know you can never.
All you got to do is host a podcast, and you get to pick.
I know.
No, it
But-
does not work that way.
No, it
people.
doesn't work that
By the
way.
way, anybody who complains in my book is from like Brooklyn. I don't know what that was. They're like, "Hey,
You got to come
everybody,
out.
hey,
Hey,
you
what's
know,
what are you doing over here, Spina? Huh?
Yeah.
I'm drawing here."
What I was gonna say too is just real quick. Materials for the horns and the
So,
teeth. Are they the same or different or?
So the understructure of the whole thing is rotocast polyurethane resin. The horns are solid cast resin. The face and teeth are from a different type of resin that has a little bit of translucency to it. And then the ears are solid resin as well. And all of those elements have to be put on separately. And some of that is to help facilitate how the hair goes on. And some of it is just because it's a little more straightforward in the casting process. Rather than having a giant complicated mold that has to capture a lot of little detail, we can do a bigger mold for the body and then bring the detail pieces onto that as we work. But it also lets you do, and weirdly, I don't know if you saw that in front of the camera, a literal hair off the wampa just floated by the camera.
Are you serious?
Are you looking at it right now? Oh,
What's that?
Are you looking at the wampa right
No.
now?
If I was, I'd pull them out. No, but like when we work on stuff like that, my wife gets mad at me. She finds chewy hairs all over the place.
Oh,
jeez.
She thinks I'm dating a redhead.
It's
on
like
the
dog
side.
hair,
No, it's
right?
Chuck, I mean
Who's
it.
this woman?
But yeah, he's the other thing is you have to have all these elements separate because the way the direction of his teeth is real weird and would jam up molds, and you have to be able to get the eyes in. So it's easier to do that with separate pieces as well.
Yeah.
And the eyes, we were talking about them before. So eventually we did get a good look at those original eyes, and we did get photographs of them, and we measured the size of the iris, the size of the pupil, etc. We got color matches on them. And we have a taxidermy place that I've been using since the early 90s that we had them do custom glass eyes for every piece of the run that matched. And it's based on an old style like gumdrop glass eye that you would get for, a taxidermy in the early 20th century kind of stuff. And it's something that, this piece also has, so I'm going to say taxidermy teeth. That doesn't mean it's got real animal teeth on the original.
Yeah.
Taxidermy teeth means a plastic jaw set that's usually injection molded translucent plastic with paint on it for the gums, and a rubber tongue. And when people do taxidermy of animals, those aren't the real teeth in the final thing. It's these plastic jaw sets that they get that they paint up realistically and they put in there because otherwise the teeth and the gums would just all rot away. So the original has these taxidermy parts in it. And, when you go to a shop like ours, there's shelves, and in the shelves there's boxes, and some of those boxes will say like fingernails, and then one will say teeth, and then one will say like taxidermy jaws, and one will say tongues, etc. down the line, eyes, eye forms. And people make fun of it when they come to see the shop for the first time. They look at they always have to giggle. There was a box for a while that had a list of how many gremlin fingers were in it, and it was slowly getting crossed off one by one. It was like, eventually the box was still up there, and it just said Mogwai fur and not a single finger, no fingers at all. But when it comes to those eyes and those teeth, that was stuff that Phil probably had similar boxes. He would keep stuff like that because he was a monster maker, and it was just like, oh yeah, I need some teeth. Here we go. So my guess is that he, had a box of eyeballs, grabbed an old set of taxidermy eyes, said these will look good, and put those in there. And now we had to figure out, what were we looking at? And I went through and I found old types of taxidermy eyes with very similar style, with the same type of blue pupil and all of that. And then talked with these people that have been making taxidermy eyes forever, and they're like, "Yeah, we know exactly what style that is." And so had to give them the measurements, and then they remade them for this run, which was just super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and no one will ever see it until they get it, because it's so hard to photograph.
I know. And I could pull up some while I'm pulling up the YouTube video that you guys have.
Oh yeah.
Talk about like the pricing of the Rancor, because
the Wampa, you mean? You just said Rancor.
The Rancor. I love the Rancor.
You got Rancor.
He loves the Rancor.
I love the Rancor.
Actually,
the Wampa.
It's funny. I just found a flash picture I took of the eyeball. Even with that, it's tough to see. I'm gonna see if I can. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna save this. It's not. I just brightened the hell out of the picture, so the fur doesn't look like much. But I'm gonna send it to you the same way here.
Okay.
I think this shows a little bit of the eyeball. It is surprisingly hard to get that thing to photograph.
Okay, all right. I think it looks good. Hold on, let me. So
this was just me messing around with my my camera for fun.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of detail in there. It shoots pretty well, considering. I was worried it was going to be tough to photograph, but it seems to, other than the fur kind of looking a little bland, like kind of looks a little plain white sometimes, it looks pretty good on screen.
It's gonna be awesome in hand. Like you said, you can like really start to see the detail in it.
I was thinking when we do our next live video from the shop, I might pull out the endoscope and put that on the eyeball, because it's got the light and the mini camera, so you get right up on it, and I'll have to like show people on the screen. It's like, okay, we're in there. But I think you can see it's got the amber around the perimeter, it's got the black iris, and then the blue pupil. It's kind of like
the level of detail is amazing. Oh my god.
Thanks.
It's
I have to give a lot of credit to Christian, who's our digital artist, because this is an exceptionally tough piece to scan, and then it is an even tougher piece to clean up from the scan.
Wow.
You can kind of make it out there. But it's wild, and he's got this kind of crazed look about him too. It's like kind of that sort of thing going on.
It's that's what brings the creature to life, is the eyes, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if you don't nail the eyes, then it's just like a puppet.
We could have painted it like it's so funny because they're so set in, and they're, like I said, they're almost impossible to see. We could have just painted those eyes black and put gloss on them, and probably 90% of the people would have been happy with that, or never even noticed it. I would say 100% of the people would have told you that his eyes were just black, and that was the reason I actually studied it.
Yeah, that was the reason I asked the question, because they could just be black, and you would think, well, that's the way the original one was done.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of creatures just have that, or tinted like a smoke tint or whatever.
Yeah, but it just shows what they did back then. What Phil did to make it like
even though you could never see it on screen in a million years, it's still there. It's still a layer of detail, and it's still something cool. The neat thing is that in the movie, he opens his mouth wide enough that you can see inside it, like the taxidermy jaws underneath, and you can see the broken teeth and the little extra teeth behind the ring of front teeth up on top, especially. There are teeth on the bottom you can't see on screen, and you can't easily see on the real puppet. And we actually went in and figured those out. And, that's where we were using that endoscope as like the Wampa orthodontist. They're getting in and like, what's going on in here?
Yeah. And I was going to say too, it's one of those things is why Phil's the greatest. And I bet you a lot of us are going to be going, back and watching that movie again, Empire Strikes Back, and trying to like pause and see like, okay, that's what Tom was talking about. All right.
Yeah.
You know, things because that scene would happen so fast, right?
Yeah, it does. Well, it's so funny because we sometimes fall into the trap of trusting the reference we've got now, by which I mean either photos, measurements, video, and scans and things like that of the prop from the archives, or behind the scenes photos and things like that, or photos from prop exhibits later. But we sometimes forget that these things were also in a movie, and we should look at that, you know? So perfect example on this, in the archives, there's what looks to be dripping blood on the sides of his mouth. There's this kind of extra chunks of hair that have been glued on over the lip, and some of those were bloody. And so we were all set to do it that way. I mean, like days away from doing our photographs and getting our final approvals, I was like just about to put the paint on there. And before I did, I'm like, you know, let me look at the movie just to see the placement again. And wouldn't you know, it's not like that in the movie. That's something that happened after the fact.
After the fact. And
if you go to our page with the announcement page on the website, there's a screenshot from the movie. There's a shot where Phil's puppeteering it. So you look at when Phil's puppeteering it, you don't see any blood on the chin. And then when you look at the screenshot down there, no blood on the chin. There's these chunks of fur hanging down, no blood. And it turns out that the glue that he used to add those few extra pieces on was probably contact cement, which can turn brown when it's touched against latex over time. And we've seen that, you know, restoring stuff for years. And I was just like, son of a gun. Like, how did we, you know, we were just about to do it. And that's a great idea. Far from, who was it that posted that?
Far from Death
Star. I love it. Yeah, everybody, who gets one of these, please take it outside, shoot at the sky. It's amazing. Like, you're like, oh yeah, this totally works. That's no wonder that's what they did.
Yeah, that's not Norway.
No, it's not, right? It's like there's houses.
Like New Jersey. What the hell?
You know, there's Joe Johnston's head poking out, like all of this stuff that was not in Norway. But yeah, that was one of those things where it was like, we have to remind ourselves, like, you have all of these different types of reference, but the ultimate arbiter, the final yes or no, is the movie. Was it like that when it saw film? And if it wasn't, then usually that's where we're going to roll back to. And that's what we did in this case, where it was like, okay, you know, we want people to be able to hold this while they're watching the movie and go like, oh crap, there it is. And not go, hey, why is this way and that's that way? The other thing that we did was, you know, the film prop is unfinished on the back. It's like a set for a movie. So like if you scroll up, you can even see on the one shoulder, it's cutting in. And there's like the fabric just, you know, they have extra fabric, so it just hung down so the camera wouldn't see underneath this thing. But the fur wraps around the back, but the middle of the back is just open, and you can see the foam and the mechanism for the head and some other stuff. And that was a tough decision for us because we're like, you know, it's so unfinished and it's so raw, and honestly would have been a more expensive thing to reproduce in the end. And really, it's like, I think most people are going to want this to feel complete, so that if they were to put this on a pedestal somewhere, you can walk around it. So we basically did Phil's last bit of his job for him and closed up the fur across the back and added distressing on the back as well. And that was one that was a weirder judgment call that Robin and I went back and forth on a little bit. But, you know, ultimately, this has to hold up to a different kind of scrutiny. You know, the one for the movie was only ever going to be seen from that angle right there. You know, you see where the camera is, you see where the puppet is. That's the only way you were ever going to see this thing. Well, now you're going to be able to walk around it, and you're going to be able to see this from all sides, and it's got to hold up to that. It's got to, you know, and luckily the detail Phil put on the puppet holds up to that kind of scrutiny. However, you know, not finishing the fur on the back of it probably would have been something I think some people would have, you know, been like,
yeah. If you're going to spend the good money on it, you got to have it finished. Now, most people are going to be focused on the front of it anyway.
Yeah.
And it would be weird if you look to the back and you're like, well, why didn't they just close it up? You know? Like
if anybody really wants, they can cut the fur off the back and yank it off with a pair of pliers, I guess, you know.
But the one Phil made was made for a certain purpose, and the one that you're making is for a different
He also
purpose.
made that thing in like a day, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Wow,
like,
a day.
we're putting a little more time into it. It's so funny, you know, when you can be loose making something, when you're doing something for a show, you can work so much faster than when you're recreating something, because there was no wrong way to put the mustache on for Phil. There was no wrong way to style the hair down the middle of the nose. There's no wrong way to cover the horns, no wrong way to lay up the lips, or to put
no reference.
Whatever he did was right. You know, whereas us, we have to agonize over where every tooth goes. You know, it's like, oh man, it's a very different process.
And quick question too. Now with the fur, is it like as soon as you take it out of the box, you don't have to mess around with it, or is it just going to be like Chewbacca, where you kind of have to futz around with it a little bit, or make it look like
needs a lot more style help? You know, because Chewbacca's got a little more floof to him, and it's much longer hair, so it wants to hang a certain way. And when you put Chewbacca under a bag, he gets pretty flat. Because this guy's hair is pretty matted down to begin with, you're probably not going to have to do much. You might want to like just run your fingers on his shoulders and his traps, maybe top of his head a little bit, just to make him a little fluffier once you take the bag off. But we spend a lot of time actually fighting fluff on him more than encouraging it. You know, for the most part, his fur is really kind of like cinched down and matted up on purpose so that it feels aged and old and has that like lived in look, so it doesn't look like it's a toy.
Gotcha.
We don't want it to look like a stuffed animal, you know?
Of course. Well, I was gonna say it looks amazing, and I definitely want to talk about the pricing before and when it's going to be released. So the signature edition will be $2,500, and the legacy edition is 2,000, well 3,000, and
$29.99.
29999.
0.99.
0.99.
No 0.99 for us.
Will be available to order on on the 20th.
Yes.
At noon Eastern. So guys, if you're interested in buying this, please set your timer or your alarm clocks for that date and time, just because you know you saw what happened last time with the Rancor. Now also Tom, you're offering 12-month financing for this for the people who are like, oh my gosh, my wife is going to kill me. By the way, guys, I do want to say that actually Tom is accepting requests for messages, like, you know, in Cameo, where you pay him a certain amount and he'll say, oh, congratulations, John, you won a Wampa.
I love that as a service. I would.
There you go.
You could. For an extra $50, I will make a video that congratulates you on winning the Regal Robot Wampa prize. And just to show your significant other.
What are you talking about, honey? I want it. And look at it.
Look at this. Look at the video. That's the owner of the company. He's congratulating.
Yeah, exactly.
That guy wouldn't just do that for $50, honey. Like,
no, he wouldn't do that.
I you know, the with the financing, the cool thing is the financing. I sound like I need to go talk about. Let me talk about this with my manager. We'll see if we can get you into one of these Wampas. You know. But it's a small down payment on this. I think it's like 15%, and then, depending on which edition you get, it's under $200 on the signature edition per month, and on the legacy edition, it's like $210 or something like that, or $215. Really, for what it is. Look, and I know our prices are not the same as people doing 10,000 pieces mass produced overseas or something. We're a small studio. There's only like 20 of us in the shop, and of that, only about half of us are in the art side of things, actually making things. So, you know, there's a ton of handwork that goes into one of these, and it's all being done in New York. Like, every part of this is made in the USA. Even the wood base is custom made at a wood place that we work with that is in the USA on the East Coast. So it's just, you know, everything that is going into this is hand finished and touched by our artists. And to be able to do that and say like, hey, this is only about $200 a month. Like it's not bad. I like to think that's actually a pretty good deal.
Well, I think so too. Just because if you really think about it too, right? Like, how many collectors I've seen in the past just missed out on stuff, and they try to go back and say, hey, is anyone selling this piece or this piece? And it's like crickets.
Right.
It's like, like no one's selling it. And it's just one of those things. It's just, it holds value, right?
The better pieces of ours seem to not turn up on the secondary market. And when they do, they're like $7,000 or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because people know that no one's selling them. And some of that's down to the edition sizes too. I mean, this is 100 pieces and 125 pieces in the 2 editions. That's nothing in the world of licensed collectibles. That's something that, we actually have to fight with the licensors and stuff to get these small edition sizes, because it's how we like to work. It's how we have to work. I couldn't, the way we make these, we don't have the time to make more of them than that. We'd never make anything else. But it's one of these things where I think we strike a good balance. I feel like we've hit a good place right now. I'm actually thrilled with the price on this. We thought it was going to have to be a lot more when we first started doing it. And we found some ways of assembly and some things in how we're making some of the resin parts that really helped the process and helped us to get the price as low as it is, which I know to other people might not sound like much. But as somebody who does effects work and has done stuff for TV shows and movies and things, like, this is such a tiny price compared to what something like this would have cost a production, even out of our shop. So it's I think it's a pretty good deal for what it is, especially when you get that partially payment plan going.
And Sean and I, we own quite a few Regal robot products, and Sean's got one of the products I hope to own in the near future, which is the Chewbacca. And it's the level of quality and the level of detail that your company puts into these products, so that, like, I haven't heard anyone complain with any product that they have received. So, oh no, there's no, but still everything's amazing, and a lot of collectors are very happy. And like you said, this is like made for you, made in the US, signed by Phil Tippett, sketched by Phil Tippett.
Right.
It's like, what more can you ask for? It's close to
made by our artists, and then handled by other people and put in a box and wrapped up carefully. And like, every part of this is hand touched, right from like when we start first casting and outputting parts, to paint, to laying hair up, to staining the teeth, to distressing the fur and adding the ice, to wrapping it, to bubbling it, to putting it in a box, to making the foam. All of this, it's all happening here, and it's it is this great group effort. And then the other sort of icing on the cake, I like to think, is Katie and Christine and Tyler and Ross and everybody on the office side that handles everybody's orders and gives them updates on when things are shipping and answers all their questions right away. Emails don't just get lost when they come to us. There's a handful of people in the office that work so hard to get all these things going. Whether they're packing up 500 holy grails or making the frames for all of the prune face sketch editions, or working on these packing up bigger things like our Tusken Raiders, or making crates for the life-size Tauntauns that we do, like physical big crates. I mean, it is a nonstop sort of process on that side of the studio. Everybody thinks about the art side, and there's a lot of work there, but man, Katie and Christine and Ross and Tyler and Tracy all worked so hard making sure that everybody gets what they ordered and make sure they're happy about it. And they constantly have the customer in mind, and they know a lot of folks by name. They when the orders come in and like somebody that we know like gets number 1 on an edition, they're like cheering for that person. They're like, oh man, he was number 2 the last 2 running, but he finally did it. It's like,
got it.
They genuinely cheer for that. And we know we have like a few people who always request the same number. And, you still have to send in the request every time, but, they already know. It's like they see the order come in and they just check like, nope, nobody requested. They already start putting them in that place because they know 30 seconds later, they're going to get an email that says, hey, can I get number 36? Can I get number whatever? And that's something that that makes me feel so good. Like that's the sort of thing that means a lot to me as a business owner and is so important to what we've built. And it's nice to hear when folks call them out as well as the artists and me and Rob and whoever else. So I'll do that now.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So before we wrap things up, a couple more questions, just really quick questions.
Sure.
When will this ship out? Like,
I
know you usually do batches, but when will the first batch start shipping out?
Yeah, right now they've got the Rancors going, and the first batches on those are actually going to start shipping in probably about 6 to 8 weeks. We're waiting on the foam inserts to come in. And those will continue. The Rancors are going to run through the end of the year at least. The Wampas will probably start pretty quickly after they go up for sale. Again, we have the foam inserts to come in, but those are going to be cut, the first samples of them this week. And then it's probably about 4 weeks or so until we start getting those. We have a couple of production molds to make this week, and then we'll be in production on them probably before they go live on the website. We will be already making parts and casting and painting parts. We're also waiting for, on something like this, where you've got different fur pieces to go on, we're actually having those plotter cut. So it's a mechanical cutter, so that it's one of the ways that we saved a little time in making these. So we're waiting for that fur to come back in. I would say probably similarly, about 6 or 8 weeks, the first one should start going out.
Okay.
So, if you're talking February 20th, March, April, I'd say by the end of April, I would not be surprised if a bunch of them aren't already shipped or shipping.
Wow.
And then it'll be, probably through the rest of the year and into the beginning of 25, just because there are a lot of them to make and they do take a bit of time.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
and in terms of upcoming products,
yeah,
and I know you take these quite a bit with those with the calendar that you had, or the schedule that you had. So anything cool coming up in the near horizon?
If anybody's not already in the Regal Robot Facebook group, the Regal Robot Fan and Collector Showcase, go join there. We always post up our schedule there as we adjust it. I believe what's on the schedule is a Temple of Doom 40th anniversary prop replica coming out in the beginning of February.
Goodness.
A new maquette that will be coming out at the not beginning of February, beginning of March. A new maquette that comes out middle to end of March. We will have, I believe, a Return of the Jedi prop replica that comes out in April.
Oh my goodness.
We will have and this is something that we hinted at. We are also doing what we call the screen size version of the Wampa at the end of April, early May. That is going to be an oversized version that would go with the life-size Tauntauns that we do.
Oh my goodness.
So that one is based on the special edition Wampa rather than the Phil Tippett puppet. And it is, we've already said it's going to be in about the $4,500 to $5,000 range. And it's a bit more of like just the head and a little collar rather than the full bust like this. And it's going to be really cool in its own way. I am more excited right now about the puppet because to me, that's sort of the prop version of it. This will be a little more of an interpretation, kind of like our Tauntauns are. They're very, very faithful to the original prop Tauntauns, but they're not as boogity, for lack of a better word. Like we plussed them up a little bit. We punched up some of the details. They're just nicer to look at. The originals are pretty rough. And we've gotten up close and personal with those too. But so that's a very different type of version of this. We'll talk a little more about that as this gets closer to releasing the puppet, so that people have a good understanding of what they're in for there. But right now, I'm just remembering. And then, yes, of course, in May, we have our first Phantom Menace piece to be determined. TBA.
There's only one awesome character from Phantom Menace that can only be worthy of having their maquette made.
Sure,
yeah. No, but I was gonna say, it sounds like Tom.
I don't even want to suggest something that it isn't, because then somebody's gonna go nuts, be like, "Oh my God, he's doing that," and then I'm like, "No, you know."
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, so we are gonna have you back on this show again pretty soon to discuss more prop.
There's so much more coming.
Oh my goodness! Return of the Jedi.
Discuss. We have too much in the works.
Yeah, I know, Sean. I mean, if you were to if you wanted something out of Return of Jedi that Tom to me, what would it be? I mean, I don't know. Oh my goodness! I mean, you got Ewok,
like
where do you even begin? There's so many. Like, oh my God! And is this the first time you're tapping into Return of the Jedi? Like,
no, I mean, I guess the maquettes are all Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, but the prop replica, why?
This is it's neat. It's something that when you see it, it'll make a lot of sense. I don't want to share much more than that. I will say this: it's a signature edition. We've got the actor involved. It's not a creature this time, but it's really cool, and it's something that I think Rob said he didn't know he wanted it until he saw it at the archives, that is. And so, that happens. George R. can wait. Mad God would be really fun. There's some cool stuff at Phil's shop on display from Mad God. I'd have to know that folks really, that enough folks out there wanted that stuff for their shelves. But if they did, that'd be something I would talk to Phil about. It's that's a real neat man. Yeah, the stuff he made for that is insane.
Yeah. Well, again, Tom, I really want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It sounds like you have a very, very hectic schedule with all the releases coming up pretty soon, or announcements.
It's going to be nuts. Yeah. People
Sean,
will be sick of me by the end of this week. I think I'm on like a podcast every night for this week.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, Sean and I are definitely going to feel this one. And
I declare bankruptcy!
Yeah, basically, that's me and Sean right now. We're
use the payment plan, under $200 a month for the signature, a little over for the legacy. You'll be in good hands. Don't worry. My manager says I can do it for you on a payment plan. Is that all right?
The payment plan works. I've got the Legacy Rancor on payment plan, and it's working out fine.
Well, what's nice about that is it carries you through our production schedule too.
Yes.
So the way we look at them is we get a bunch of orders that pay in full and a bunch on payment plans, and it's like, okay, we'll work for a few months to knock out the paid in full orders, and then we piecemeal out the other ones while people are paying them off, so that by the time they do pay off, usually the thing is ready to go.
Yeah, because my plan was like just to kind of ride it for a little bit, and then once they start shipping, I can go ahead and just pay the rest of it off and try to get mine a little earlier.
Yeah, you can always. So if anybody's ever curious about doing that, you can do it through partially, and you can always check in with Katie or Christine and say, like, if I were to pay this off, how long would it take for mine to ship? Because they'll know, like, oh, how close are we to finishing all the paid in full orders?
That's my game plan.
We can add another one into the mix. But it's a good way to do it, and it gives you a little breathing room. It keeps some money free for who knows what's going to come out.
I know.
Yeah, and I'm glad, to be honest. Like, I was talking to Sean before. I said, you got to get the Rancor. I'm so glad he jumped on it. He was one of the lucky few that got the Legacy edition. So.
I'm upset I missed the first Rancor.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's the thing too, is
that's
that like,
that's my one regret.
and that's the thing too. Like, that's why I encourage, collectors out there. If you're on the fence, just don't, like, if you really want this, just get it, because you don't want to go back and say, I should have.
That first Rancor is one of those ones that you just never see come up. I mean, it was only 83 pieces in the edition, but man, yeah. The interesting thing about that one too is the price on it was so much cheaper than we could do it now. And some of that's just down to the way the market has changed in terms of the expensive side of things over the last 3 or 4 years. But we had different partnerships at the time in terms of casting, and we were able to get, just really, really good pricing to get that in at the price we got. And it's funny, that was one of those pieces everybody said, oh, it's overpriced, oh, it's too expensive. It sold out right away, and now you can't get one. I was like, the price is the price. But if we ever had to re-release that, or if we would never do a straight re-release, but if we ever did another, Rancor prop replica type thing, it would be, 4,500 or 5,000. It's just, there's so much work that went into those. That's part of the reason I was so happy with, where the Wampa pricing came in. To me, 2,500 was like, oh my God, I can't believe we can actually do that. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want to say thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. Looks like we're going to have you back on the show if you would like to come back on the show.
I guess so. I need to get my free sandwich. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to bring my Sith card. That's going to have
there you go.
Well, I was going to say, seriously, you guys are doing amazing work right there. This came out of left field. This blew me away. It blew a lot of collectors away. And keep up the great work. You guys are doing an amazing job. You and your team, really amazing work. And thank you for everything, man.
Much appreciated.
All right. Yeah. All right, guys. So that wraps it up. Please check out Regal Robots Facebook page, website. Please set your alarm clocks for February 20th, 12 noon Eastern time. Do not miss out. Don't miss it. And thank you guys again. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And forget about the Super Bowl.
It's over anyway. It's over.
Yeah. All right, guys. Take care. And may the midichlorians be with you guys always and forever. Sean, another one in the books, man. Take care.
Peace.
Strike me down with all of your hatred, and your journey towards the dark side will be complete.